The WNBA season wrapped up on Sunday, and the playoffs are here. They start on Wednesday night. The New York Liberty have an intriguing first-round matchup with the Washington Mystics. So, we got to break it down for a playoff preview. And joining me to preview the W playoffs are two of the best covering women's basketball. We've got Khristina Williams, the founder of Girls Talk Sports TV, and Myles, Ehrlich, Liberty reporter for Winsidr, also co-host of Pull Up with Myles and Owen. Both are here in studio joining me now. How you guys doing?
Doing great. So good to be here.
Good to have you back, Khristina. Myles, your first time. Good to have you here. How you doing?
I'm good. Super excited for this. Super excited for the playoffs, the season we've had. So,
yes.
Yeah, everything's great.
I know. I'm so excited for the playoffs. We got 4 good first-round matchups that we'll see. Best of 3. We're going to get right into this. I'm going to start off with the top-seeded Las Vegas Aces. They're going up against the number 8 seed, the Chicago Sky. Look, guys, we know. Vegas, they've been dominant all year. They grabbed the number 1 seed. I got to ask you this, Khristina. Is Vegas just going to be too much for Chicago to handle here?
I absolutely think that Vegas have a lot of advantages coming into this series against the Chicago Sky, who have been shorthanded this season due to injuries. And also, they lost their core group that was a part of that championship run in 2021 as well in free agency. And they also had to deal with losing their head coach in James Wade. And so the Chicago Sky, they come in as the underdogs for this. The Aces are 19-1 at home. They have one of the best defensive teams and offensive teams in the league and are on a historic run. They're trying to attempt to go back-to-back, which would be the first team to do so in over 20 years. The last team to do that was the LA Sparks in the early 2000s. And so they are on a mission. And the Las Vegas Aces, they lost Candace Parker, but Kia Stokes has stepped up big time in that starting lineup position. On the defensive end, a little bit of an offensive liability. He's helped big time in terms of filling in that role that Candace Parker was having. They also are shorthanded in Raquana Williams. She was a big help off the bench in that championship run last year. And so they have Alicia Clark, and she's a candidate for 6th Player of the Year. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Becky Hammon uses her players and how she goes and use her depth on the bench as well. But I do think that the Aces have the advantage over the Sky.
Yeah, and the thing you bring up there is the depth, right? So much depth for the Aces. Also the championship medal. We know they've done this before, looking, like you said, to become the first back-to-back champions that we haven't seen in almost 2 decades. Myles, I got to ask you this. On the Chicago side, right? Huge underdogs here. Nobody's probably giving them much of a chance. They're going to use that as motivation. What does Chicago have to do to pull the upset here?
I mean, this is a great team to have their backs against the wall. Earlier this season, about a month into the season, James Wade left, and they had to overcome that adversity. So for them to battle and get to the postseason was already pretty spectacular. But I think even though Vegas won the season series 3-0, that third game showed a little bit more of what Chicago could do. They lost by 7, but I just brought up some numbers because points to the paint in those first 2 games, Vegas 100-52. That last game, 42-38, so almost even. Fast break points were 38-15 in those first 2 games, and then 16-15 in that third game. When Chicago was able to kind of push a little bit more in transition, I think that's where the Aces can be vulnerable sometimes. They're a strong rebounding team, but they can sometimes just try to be pushing in one way and then not get back in the other way. And I think that that's something that Chicago could exploit when you have Kahleah Copper, when you have Marina Mabrey, when you have Courtney Williams, who's having a spectacular season, both shooting from 3, assists, and Dana can heat up off the bench, Dana Evans. So the formula is there for them to maybe steal a game, and then it could be a best of 1 back in Chicago.
Well, that's what they don't want. Khristina, I saw you nodding your head there in agreement with that because you hear Myles talking about the ability for Chicago to push the pace. Is that something you think they could do as well?
I definitely think that they can probably steal 1 game overall if they take care of the ball and limit their turnovers. But you talk about the dominance of the Aces, right? A'ja Wilson, we expect her to be dominant through this series, but I'm looking at that finals MVP matchup of Kahleah Copper and Chelsea Gray. Last year, Chelsea Gray peaked at the right moment and really helped the Aces push over to beat the Connecticut Sun in the WNBA Finals, and I expect her to have somewhat of the same thing in this series against the Chicago Sky.
Okay, so both of you guys are saying in an agreement that, look, this could happen. They could steal a game here. This is possible, and the Aces could be on the ropes where 1 game anything happens. What's your prediction? Myles, I'm going with you first. Prediction time. Who are you predicting, Vegas or Chicago? Who are you going with?
So after I just said they could steal a game, I'm going to backpedal real quick. I think that the Aces are just such a complete team. It would take a huge performance. And Ka dropped career high 37 against the Aces earlier this season. So it could happen. But that team, this is not a team that has had any kind of championship hangover, any kind of championship let up. They hit the ground running, and they've been strong throughout. I think that they know what it takes to get it done, and they've got the personnel to do it. So I think that this doesn't leave Vegas. I think it's a 2-0 sweep for this first round.
All right, 2-0 sweep doesn't leave Vegas. Are you going with the same, Khristina?
Listen, the Vegas are 19-1 at home, so I'm going to go with Myles and go with that 2-0 sweep. I'm taking the Aces in this series.
All right, taking the Aces, both of you, disappointing. I thought both of you were going to try to make this
I mean, they could possibly, but it's going to take a lot from Kahleah Copper.
I think so. I think it would. I like your picks there. Okay, we're going to move on to the local team. We got to talk about them. That is the New York Liberty. They are the 2 seed. They will face the 7-seeded Washington Mystics. I think this is an interesting matchup. Washington won the first and last game between both of these teams. I'm going to get to you in a second, Khristina, because Khristina, when she did our WNBA preview, she was the one who said, watch out for the Washington Mystics. They are a dangerous team. They can make things happen. Washington's had some issues with health this year to some of their players. Wanted to ask you this. I'm going to start with Myles first. Khristina, we're going to get to you since you were high on the Mystics. We're going to do that. With Elena Delle Donne and Ariel Atkins back in the fold for the Mystics, do you view them as a dangerous opponent for the Liberty here in the first round?
Well, first things first, all 8 teams that progress to the playoffs are definitely dangerous, could knock anybody out. We have seen that they're, the top teams, New York and Vegas and Connecticut, have separated a bit. But again, best of 3 series, anything can happen. I think I'm a little bit less worried than Khristina is about this series, although the Mystics have given the Liberty trouble. They just won the other night, right, in that buzzer beater from Brittany Sykes.
Yep.
But the 2 players that you asked about in particular, Elena Delle Donne and Ariel Atkins, they are 2 of the 3 highest net rating players when you're talking about the on-off for these teams. EDD leads the team. They're a plus 5.3 when she's on the court and a minus 3.4 when she's off. And then Shakira Austin, who may not play, and that may be a big deal in this series, is the second best player there. And then Ariel Atkins is third. So I think that is really important when you're talking about this matchup. But also what I've paid a lot of attention to is what that has done to Breanna Stewart. Breanna Stewart, aside from the Aces, where she averaged 18 points a game, this is the only matchup where she's averaged under 20. And her shooting percentages are in the low 30s, and then I think it's 14% from 3. She's averaging just over 15 points against the Mystics. They've defended her really well. And even if Shakira can't go, because we still don't know, but they have a lot of depth in that front court. When you look at Elena, but you also look at Myisha Hines-Allen, can switch a lot. Queen Egbo is over there. They've got a lot of names in that front court, and I think Tiana Hawkins, I didn't mention, and she's played great minutes for them all year. I know you thought about her as a potential end-of-year 6-woman candidate. So they've got so much depth in that front court, and that's what you need to bother somebody like Breanna Stewart, who's an MVP candidate.
Right, and that disruption could cause problems for the Liberty. You, and Myles just said it, you're more concerned about this than he might be. And I think one of the things when I look at this, Khristina, is the backcourt, right?
Yes.
So you've got Courtney Vandersloot, you've got Sabrina Ionescu on one side, and then you got Brittany Sykes and Natasha Cloud on the other side, known for their defense as well, too. Do you think that backcourt can cause problems for the Liberty, and how important is it that the Liberty win that matchup if the backcourt's right there?
I think in the regular season, what we've seen was the great ball movement of the New York Liberty versus that ground coverage of the Washington Mystics. And Natasha Cloud and Brittany Sykes are a huge part of the Washington Mystics defense, and they can interrupt the flow and the pace of the New York Liberty's offense. And I think that they are definitely a threat when you see that. But then you look at the New York Liberty offense, and they're having one of the best offensive seasons that they've ever had in the franchise history. And so I think that if the Liberty can take care of the ball, if they can be consistent, Courtney Vandersloot and Sabrina Ionescu, they definitely have a chance to come out of this series against the Mystics. But that defense is very, very tough, and they definitely control the pace of the game. The Washington Mystics with their defense.
Go, Myles. You want to say something there?
Yeah, it's a very, very aggressive defense. And I think we've seen that bother Courtney Vandersloot a little bit more than Sabrina. And Sab really, when a defense tries to overplay, she usually matches that intensity. And I think we saw it the other night when she, I think, hit 3 straight threes at one point, and she's showed up pretty consistently in this matchup. But yeah, those guards, and it's Atkins, it's Cloud, it's Sykes. They've got a lot that they can throw at you. But one player that I feel like we don't often, two players we don't talk about enough, really. Jonquel Jones, JJ is super important in this series, especially if Shakira can't go. But also Benijah Laney.
Yes.
In September, Benijah is averaging over 18 points a game, shooting 54% from the field and 50% from three and hitting more than 90% of her free throws. She's hitting 2.2 threes a game. And as the season has gone on, every successive month, she's seen her points per game go up and her shooting percentages go up. And she's also going to pick up whoever she wants full court and bring that energy, and the whole team kind of jumps on her back and follows her there. So if Benijah is playing that well on the offensive end and also a shutdown defender on the other end, that's a huge advantage for the Liberty.
Yeah,
And
she's
also
such a
one thing-
fantastic two-way player. Sorry,
I was going to say, one thing that Coach Sandy preached about this group was turnovers being like an Achilles heel. And the Washington Mystics, they're a team that is good at jumping the passing lanes and getting those steals. And so they just have to limit the turnovers.
Taking care of the ball will be key in this series for the Liberty if they're to pull it out. Which brings us to what, guys? Prediction time.
Ooh, here we go.
Khristina, you know what? We'll go with Myles first. You're smiling there since you think the Liberty might be in some trouble. Myles, this series, who you going with? Are you picking the Liberty or are you going with the Mystics?
I'm picking the Liberty, and I've got 2-0 here. I think that the Barclays crowd has also been huge, and it's really important to cover. It's been a really, really surprising thing to me to cover this team and hear these veterans talk about how important it is to win at home and to build that crowd and to use that energy. And we've seen it. We've seen that as the game progresses, the crowd at Barclays gets more and more into the game. And I don't think they let one slip there. I feel like all of this they have kept the season in perspective. They came out, they put this team together, and they said, we're not a super team. We haven't done anything super yet. We haven't earned that. This looks great on paper. We have to execute. Then they win the Commissioner's Cup. They beat Vegas. That's the first time Vegas lost at home. Right? And they said, this is great. This is just a trophy on the way to a more important trophy. All the accolades that we're hearing, names going out, Stewie MVP, Sabrina on an all-W team, Benijah all-defense. They're like, those are individual awards. This is where the season really matters. I think that they just do everything they can to make sure that they don't have to go to Washington for that Game 3. So I've got them 2-game sweep here, too.
All right, you got the Liberty taking care of business. Khristina, you have a little bit more concern. Are you giving the Mystics a game?
I'm going to have this series go into a Game 3, and here's why. This is a Washington Mystics team that has most of their core that returns from that 2019 championship run. And we can't forget Elena Delle Donne, the greatness that is in her. She leads this team, and also Natasha Cloud. And so I think that this goes to Game 3, but I have the New York Liberty pulling out of this series.
All right,
it's going to come down to the coaching, I think.
Okay.
And Sandy Brondello is more of an experienced coach over Eric Thibault. And so I think that it's going to be who can coach? Who can outcoach one another?
All right, you got the Liberty sweating a little bit. Liberty fans didn't want to hear that. We'll see how that series plays out. Now, the 3-6 matchup, guys, I think it's a matchup of two teams that clearly exceeded expectations, right? You got the Connecticut Sun, you got the Minnesota Lynx. Although in our season preview, our good friend Tarika Foster-Brasby, she said she thought the Connecticut Sun was going to be really good. They ended up doing that this year. Now, the Lynx, they started the season 0-6. They have bounced back. My question here, and I got for you, Khristina, first, do the Lynx have enough here to stop Alyssa Thomas and the Sun? Do they have enough to actually do that?
I don't think that they have enough, but they have been hitting a stride this season. They're 10-10 on the road. And also, I think that this series will definitely come down to three things. Can they keep up the momentum? Can they contain Alyssa Thomas, who actually averages a triple-double against this group? And so that's going to be hard for this group to do. And then it also is going to come down to their defense as well. Nafisa Collier, Michaela McBride, Diamond Miller, who's a rookie, stepped up in a major big way for this group to be able to push them to get those tiebreakers to make the playoffs. The Lynx, I think this is also going to come down to experience. Connecticut, there are 161 games in the postseason versus the Lynx starting five, who it's only 23 games in the postseason in terms of experience. And so the Connecticut Sun, they're on a run to get their first championship in franchise history. I think that they have enough to pull out this series 2-0.
Okay, so you got your prediction from you already. 2-0, they got there. Myles, when you look at the Sun, right, it's been all about Alyssa Thomas this season, and rightfully so. She's gotten a lot of the accolades. She's been putting up triple-doubles in the regular season. Do you feel like there's pressure on her to continue that here in the postseason? Do you think she can perform to that level here in the postseason?
I don't think there's anything Alyssa Thomas can't do. She's spectacular. And you talked about Tarika. And Tarika at the All-Star break, she did these short hitters with players where she was like, these over-unders. And I remember she asked Nafisa Collier, over-under how many triple-doubles does Alyssa Thomas have on the season? And she said, way over. And then at the time, it was like right at the mark. But she said, oh, it just feels like every time she plays against us, she gets a triple-double.
She averages a triple-double.
And like Khristina said, 17.3, 13.0 rebounds, 10.3 assists in the 4 matchups. So Alyssa Thomas plays some of her best basketball. And it's an interesting matchup between her and Fee because both of them are kind of positionless, right? Both of them can do basically anything on the court. So we're going to see them match up quite a bit. And that's 2 of my top 5 MVP candidates, 2 of my top 4 MVP candidates. And this is the only series that has 2 of my all-W players in it. So having those superstars there, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I do worry a little bit, like you said, about some of the experience on this team. They've got a couple of rookies that have really stepped up in Diamond Miller, in Dorka Juhas, but that's a lot. This is a big stage, right? And maybe it'll help Dorka that she'll be playing in Connecticut, where she played some big games in college, right?
I do think that Aerial Powers could be a key in this series. Her defense, her offense as well, and she also has a championship. Don't forget, she won with the Washington Mystics in 2019. Coach Miller hasn't been playing her in a rotation much as of late, but I think that she could be a key piece in this series to help the Minnesota Lynx push to at least win 1 game. But we'll see.
So, your prediction was 2-0 Sun. You brought up experience. What's your prediction, Myles?
So when you look at the Lynx as a season's whole, they've actually overperformed. They are 8th in offensive rating, 10th in defensive rating, and 10th overall in net rating. So if you took out the wins, losses, and just went by what their numbers say, they should be the 10th best team in the W. So they have overperformed that. And like you said, slow start. This is the 3rd straight year that they had a slow start that they've had to overcome. But Connecticut has been rolling. They absorbed losing JJ in the offseason. They absorbed that Bree Jones injury and have played really strong basketball throughout the entire campaign. I've got them in the series. I do think this is a perfect time for Fee to make a statement, though. So I think that she steals a game for them. She goes off and steals a game for them because there is no great matchup for her either, just like there's no great matchup for AT. So I think this goes to 3. But ultimately, I'm with the favorite again. I've got Connecticut moving on. All
right, Myles keeping the chalk, going with the favorite. Got this one going to 3. Yeah, you guys are on a roll with the predictions here. All right, our last playoff matchup, we got the 4th-seeded Dallas Wings against the 5th-seeded Atlanta Dream. So Dallas in their existence, guys, as a franchise, in their 8 seasons, they've made it 5 times, but they've never advanced past the first round here. And when you look at these teams, they're kind of similar, Myles, in terms of scoring and rebounding, which when I look at that, I start saying, okay, will defense be the difference here in this series? Do you have a team that you think will be better defensively in this series, and who would you put your money on being better defensively?
So when you talk about defense, I think it would seem like Atlanta might have the advantage because since the All-Star break, Dallas has had the 2nd worst defensive rating in the league. But then you flip to the other side, and Atlanta has by far had the worst offensive rating since the All-Star break in the W. And so I tried to break down a little bit more why that's happening. And Atlanta's also pretty far down in the number of their shots that are assisted. So they're not really playing great basketball with one another. They like to go downhill, try to drive at the rim, and that's playing right into the strength of the Dallas Wings. They've got Tierra McCowan, Satu Sabally, Natasha Howard. They've got just so many, Kalani coming off the bench. They've got so much depth there in that front court. And if they're going to put their heads down and drive, or if they're going to take isolation jumpers, that's playing right into Dallas's hands. Neither of these are 3-point shooting teams. So the other thing I'll look at when it comes to, you're talking about defense, is rebounding. And these are both top 3 rebounding teams in the W. But the Dream are number 3, and the Wings are number 1, and they also love to hit that offensive glass and get those second chance opportunities. And that, I think, with just the amount of size that they have, that's the big advantage for Dallas in this series.
So you got them with the advantage there. Khristina, when you look at the Dream, they are in the playoffs for the first time since 2018. You could talk about the young player, Reen Howard, and how great she's been. What do you expect from her in this first-round series from the talented guard? What do you expect from her? And if they have any shot to win, you would think they need some big-time performances from her, correct?
Absolutely, and Ryan is someone who knows how to show up when the lights are bright. She's one of the most efficient scorers in the league. She's a versatile playmaker for this team. She's hands down the Dream's best player. And we can see it in this season. She's averaging over 17.5 points, four and a half rebounds, 3.5 assists over playing 32 minutes. For her team. And I think that one example that we saw this season is when the Dream went on that 9-game stretch and she reached career highs, averages of over 22 points a game. And they went 7-2 during that stretch. So I think that Ryan, she will show up for the Dream. We saw that when she was in college, how she showed up big in the SEC tournament against LSU when they upset. So I think that we'll get that version of Ryan coming into the playoffs and her first playoffs of her career.
Right.
But I do think that in order for the Dream to be successful, they're going to need the surrounding cast of Alicia Gray, Cheyenne Parker to step up on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, they're a young team. It's going to be really interesting to see what they can do on this stage. For having been here, as I said, since 2018. All right, prediction time. Going with you first here, Khristina. We're going first for you with the predictions. Can't let Myles lead off all the time. Who wins this series, Atlanta Dream or Dallas Wings?
I'm going to have to go with the Dallas Wings on this one. And it's a tough toss-up between the two teams because I do feel like
4 or 5 matchups, so generally like that.
Right, two evenly matched teams. But I think that Satu Sabali and Arike, Natasha Howard, who has championships and that experience, I think that they're going to pull it off. So I'm going to have the Dream.
Sweep? You got them sweeping?
I'm going to have this going to Game 3.
Going 3. All right, what about you, Myles?
Man, I'm thinking about these social media teams and how the Dream will come after us if we don't pick them and they upset.
They will find you.
Yep,
they will find you.
They will find us. But yeah, just based on how this second half of the season has gone, I think if you asked me at the All-Star break, I would have given Atlanta that edge. But Dallas has really taken it to another level while Atlanta has slipped a bit. So I've got the Wings in this one. 2 or 3. I'll go 3. Yeah, I think this is going to be a great series. Like you said, 4 or 5 could go either way. These are two evenly matched teams. And you talked about Ryan Howard and how she steps up in big games. And you talked about that hot streak she had. That was around the time where she was snubbed from the All-Star game.
Yes.
Right? So Ryan, when she can find that motivation from wherever and then really step up. And I think that there's lots of motivation out there to be found and that Ryan can step up and lead this team to some victories. And Alicia, the Wings are her former team too, so there's a little bit of extra there too.
There's some motivation there too.
Chip on her shoulder.
Just a little chip there. We'll see. All right, so those are the 4 series. We are at the start of the W playoffs right now, and so I've got to get. While I have both of these great journalists here, I've got to ask you guys the big question. The question everybody wants to know is, which teams are going to go to the WNBA Finals, and who is going to win the WNBA Championship? Myles, since you like to go first, I'm going to start with you. Myles, what are your picks?
So we've gone mostly from preseason to now, right? To every point of the season, every time we check in, it feels like we've got the same 2 teams. This is what we want to see, right? We want to see these 2 juggernauts kind of go at each other. We want to see the Aces. We want to see the Liberty. And I think that things do line up for that to happen. Right? So I've got Aces and Liberty, but for the first time, I will not go chalk. I'm going to go with the underdog, with the lower seed here, who I'm going to say is the underdog.
Oh.
And I think that the Liberty have played, especially in the second half of the season, played the Aces really well. They won, including the Commissioner's Cup game, 3 out of those 4 matchups, and none of the 5 matchups this season were particularly close. And it's going to be a battle of the superstars, but if Asia and Stewie are canceling each other out, it could come down to not having Candace Parker, because you're looking at a team with 5 All-Stars versus a team with 4, and when the benches shrink a little bit in the postseason, there's championship experience on both sides. There's really this is what this Liberty team came together to do and has had all this motivation. I think that it'll be an awesome series and it'll go 5, but I think that the Liberty pull it out.
All right. I think New York fans can like that. Liberty pulling it out. I think that's a good pick. Khristina, what are you going with? Who are your 2 WNBA Finals teams and who wins it all?
I'm going to have to go Las Vegas Aces, New York Liberty, teams 1 and 2 right now in the overall standings. And I think that the Liberty will pull it out. Just as Myles said, I think that we will have our first championship in franchise history in New York this year. And partly because the New York Liberty, they have more depth at the bench. And we saw how much Stephanie Dolson, Maureen Johannes, Kayla Thornton have been so key in helping the Liberty win these key matchups against the Las Vegas Aces. Like you said, it's going to come down to not having Candace Parker, not having Raquana Williams, who's not with the team right now, who was a crucial part of the Aces winning that championship last year. And so I'm going to go with the New York Liberty.
So with all that being said, I'd like to say I really hope this matchup happens. It's the matchup I think everybody's been wanting to see. And the games have been fantastic this year. The hype, I think everybody wants to see that in the W finals. It would be great for the sport. And you know what New York wants to see? The prediction you guys made.
Yes.
The Liberty
Absolutely.
winning. That's what New York wants to see. So we will see. Guys, this was great. I'm glad we got to do this for the first time here, previewing the W playoffs. First time in studio for Myles. Myles, you did fantastic.
Thank you.
Khristina is a seasoned vet in studio now. Did good with the predictions as well, too. Thank you, guys. We got to do this again and enjoy the W playoffs, okay?
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, always great to have it. That is the great Khristina Williams, the founder of Girls Talk Sports TV. Myles Ehrlich, the fantastic Liberty beat reporter for Winsidr, also host of Pull Up with Myles and Owen. Check that out. Check these guys out as well. Enjoy the W playoffs, everybody.